All right, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast. My name is David Levine, founder and CEO of Rest Tech Solutions. And today we are talking about why marketing and IT can't operate in silos anymore for modern law firms. And I'd like to welcome our guest today, Brendan. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, David. And thanks for having me on here. Happy to talk to your folks and your listeners. Yeah. So my name's Brendan Chard, and I run a company called The Modern Firm, and we do branding, website design, and digital marketing exclusively for solo and small law firms all across the country. We've been in business for over 25 years, and yeah, we just sort of help attorneys live the dream.
So, from your experience working with hundreds of law firms, where do you see marketing and IT overlapping the most today? And where do you see firms struggling to connect the two effectively?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. But sort of where this intersection is between marketing and sort of more the operations on the tech side of things, because uh, really it's just sort of the pace of things is so quick. And so what really needs to happen is that there is just a total seamless handoff from the marketing side of things where you're trying to get visibility, get leads, get people contacting the firm and have it be totally seamless, sort of where the marketing side of things sort of end and get into like the operation side of the business, which is like your phone ringing reliably wherever you are, your emails getting delivered and not getting stuck in the wrong space. Essentially, just like that smooth handoff into the systems for the firm, CRM, processing that information so that it just goes right in front of the people that need it, so that it's just all totally smooth.
All right. No, that's great information. And I appreciate you sharing that because I know that it's always a struggle for, especially as you mentioned, smaller businesses, solopreneurs that you work with, just trying to get a handle on that. So I think that's a really great insight. And kind of talking more about your business, I know from what you actually have published out there, you say the Modern Firm has built over 1,400 law firm websites. So what are the biggest technical or infrastructure mistakes do you see firms make early on when launching or redesigning their own website?
Yeah, sure. So again, here's this sort of intersection between what you might think of as like marketing and pretty stuff and branding and like getting your stuff out there, and then like the very real work that needs to happen behind the scenes to have it be reliable. Two of the things that come up the most is around like the hosting and maintenance of the website. A lot of people don't realize is that you can't just make a website and have it be out there. It needs to have somebody, some company in charge and being responsible for its publication. So it needs to be on servers that are public facing on the web, that are reliable, that are secure, and sort of always being updated. And one of the mistakes we see firms make is either really going sort of a cheap do-it-yourself route with the hosting, where a lot of the security things are not being taken care of, or they try to bring it in-house. And now you have this sort of very public facing thing that is sort of within the confines of your office and the secure environment there. And that just can really add a whole other layer of complication and potential liabilities if it isn't kept up properly. Um, and so examples of things that happen, like if you let the software get out of date, and this is software at all sorts of different levels. The most common way that websites are built, or the most popular software, is a platform called WordPress. And it allows for the site to be developed, to look good, and to have a very friendly editing interface for it. But just like any piece of software, like a phone, your computer, whatever, it's being updated constantly. Between the WordPress software and the various plugins that add functionality to it, we are processing and vetting and testing and rolling out hundreds, if not thousands, of updates a year, just to make sure that the software is staying secure, up to date, compatible with all of the other components of the website. So it's a lot of work. You've got to have a system in place that sort of automates it and also eyes on it to make sure things are going smoothly. And examples of things that go wrong are this most commonly the site gets hacked, it gets defaced, it starts publishing content either publicly or secretly that is against the interests, the brand of the law firm. And we've seen everything from shoes in Russia, mail order brides, pornography, I mean, all sorts of stuff, political messages. And it's nasty. And then if it goes on long enough, your site gets flagged by the search engines, the credibility of the site goes down, it gets de-indexed. That then can impact the deliverability of your emails because your .com name, which is usually the website and the email, are running on the same domain name. So the reputation there gets impacted. And we've had firms that make the wrong steps and all of a sudden they need to change the domain of their email. That rolls into business cards, collateral, all sorts of things. In the meantime, they're having a real hard time just, running the day to day. And it's all because these sort of relatively straightforward updates most of the time just weren't happening. It falls apart, gets hacked. The other area that we see, and I just sort of touched on this, where there's this intersection between marketing and the tech of the firm, is with the domain name itself. And so again, that's like your website address, your email address. Usually it's a .com name. And what's very common in law firms when they're registering these names is that they just have some employee at the firm do this. And it's just an annual registration. Firms often buy it multiple years in advance. And so it's a small expense. It often flies under the radar. It is frequently registered by somebody who at the firm, but who is not the owner of the firm. And what will happen over these years is the firm loses track of who has access to this thing that is critical for running the email and the website for the law firm. We've seen crazy things. Last year, I had we helped recover a domain name that was registered to, what was this? It was the ex-husband of a former partner of the law firm. I mean, it was like a disaster. I've seen variations of those things happen, but it's just a simple, it just, firms are busy. They just do this thing. Okay, it's done. It's sort of set it and forget it. And all of a sudden, it's 4 years later. The credit card on file has expired. The person it was registered to is no longer working at the firm. And all of a sudden, this, thing that only costs $30 a year and is a total linchpin to all of the sort of technology at the firm is like lost or inaccessible. And so that's another, thing that we sort of deal with a lot when we're, starting a website project, is making sure that that's all straightened out, and the firm has really solid, ownership of that asset.
And that's a very good point because, we've actually had a similar experience with one of our clients where, they were working with another agency to do some of the marketing pieces. And that agency had actually registered the domain. And then, they ran into an issue when that relationship kind of soured.
Hmm.
They, as kind of in a malicious way of sorts, would not release the domain back to the client.
Yeah, that's a great point. That again, we used to see that happening more in years past, but it was again pretty underhanded technique for agencies to keep their claws into a firm and not really giving them full ownership of their identity. So yeah, no, that's another thing. Whether it's agency, IT vendor, somebody, it's not properly owned by the firm. So definitely a critical thing for firms to check out.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to touch on because you're talking about keeping things up to date and managing all these things, but we really haven't touched on the actual content of the website itself. And probably one of the biggest indicators we see because a lot of times if there's not a lot of changes happening with the firm, and again it's a solo, maybe a few people on staff, and things are pretty stable, so maybe there's not a lot change on the website. But one thing that we notice a lot of times when looking is the actual copyright date on the website. So can you speak to that and what you would recommend that firms make sure happens around that to keep things at least the way I look at it and the way I've always educated my clients is, if nothing else, at least update on the annual because it shows people that, hey, I've looked at my website, this is confirming, yeah, this is our most up to date information on here versus you go to a site and, in fact, I just saw one like just yesterday and it had a copyright date of 2022 and it makes me sit and question, okay, how much of this stuff on here is still relevant?
Right, right, right. Yeah, well, really, not just the copyright, but anything that has a date on it can be a real giveaway as to how much the firm is paying attention to that side of their image. So I believe that, technically from like a legal standpoint, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that this is the correct thing, is that the copyright date technically only needs to be updated when the content has changed. But the firm should be, on top of this and changing it with some regularity. And that is, to the lay public, that is an early indication of like, well, is the firm paying attention or not here? We set things up, relatively automatically so that when the year rolls over, the copyright updates automatically. The year rolling over or just setting some sort of periodic check-in with the website is a really important thing for firms to do. It's something that we do proactively with our clients, but even just revisiting the copyright, the privacy policy, the disclaimer, sort of those statements on the website to make sure that they are still accurate and lined up with whatever sort of marketing or tools you're using or whatever changes in the law have happened. Fortunately, for many small firms, they fall under the threshold for a lot of the more complicated privacy notices and things like that, such as things going on in Europe. California has specific ones, but a lot of small firms are under the revenue limits, the thresholds for those, so they don't really need to do them. Although they can if they want to sort of show compliance, even though it's not entirely necessary. But um, yeah, another one with dates too is just if you have published a section on your website, such as a blog or firm news, and it has the date associated with each publication. That's also another indicator if they haven't published anything since 2014. Things are maybe sliding, or you could also argue, well, they're busy, and so they're not paying attention to this. They're doing good work. They're too busy for the website. Yeah. In either way, the dates can really be a dead giveaway as to how much the firm's paying attention to that side of things.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the insight because I know, that's probably one of the biggest things that at least that I notice, and some of the partners I work with that we pay attention to help, as we're working with smaller businesses too. So just want to make sure we covered that because I know that can be, as we mentioned, kind of for your the public out there that's looking, an indicator they may pay attention to potentially. And I know earlier you had kind of talked about, with law firms, whether they're kind of doing this themselves or they're hiring, a firm like yourself. And so when kind of talking about that, when they're making that decision process, whether, to self-manage or host, like their website, the domains and email and all that goes with it, what do you see that is usually driving these decisions to whether they go one way or the other?
Yeah. Well, frankly, some of it's budget. It depends on where the firm is at their in their growth or their trajectory as to whether they are wanting to, if they're deciding that, oh yeah, this is something not as critical to us, and so we're going to just at least maybe first version just do it on our own and get something out there. But generally, what we see as firms grow, as they mature, and frankly get more busy with their own clients, they tend to start bringing in help, like your company and, firm, in the IT sector and us in the, website side of things. They might use like a reception services to start answering the phone if they can't do it on their own anymore. So as they get busier with their actual work, they start bringing in, professional relationships to help with the marketing and operations side of things, so that they're not having to wear all those hats and get pulled in so many directions. So that's sort of what we see, and it's similar. I'm sure the law firms can relate just to that question with their own clients as to like, well, when does the client hire a lawyer versus trying to do it on their own? And it really is a matter of as the needs become greater and more sophisticated, then it's helpful to bring in professional help.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a great segue to ask, because now that we have more and more AI entering the mix of things that people do and what they have access to and the capabilities of AI, how are you seeing that kind of impact what law firms might be doing in terms of, continuing to outsource certain things like the marketing and IT, to, the respective companies out there? And also knowing, from a lot of discussions we have had with the law firms that what I'm seeing is a trend that a lot of them are internally adopting AI to help streamline and automate a lot of things. So what impact has that had or have you seen from your perspective in regards to the marketing and websites and email?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't think there's ever in the 25 years I've been doing this, I don't there's been no technological change that's come along in that time that has impacted things so greatly across the entire industry and sort of workforce, because it's not just the work that we do, it's the work that lawyers are doing as well. And so it's just such a broad impact all at once. I think a lot of people's heads are spinning, and it's still kind of hard to gauge exactly how it's impacting and in the ways that it's going to impact in the future. What we're seeing on the marketing side is a few different things. Certainly, the landscape, how things look, when somebody does a search online, the tools that are available to them to find a lawyer, to find a product, to find help with something have changed dramatically in the last few years with, ever since Chat GPT and then all of the other ones have come out. So now not only do you have a really a more complicated or distributed way that like Google is presenting, because used to be, I'm going to go to Google and look at it. But now Google is showing you AI summaries, advertisement, local results. People also ask, and so it's before it even gets to sort of the organic results that people used to have the most trust in. It's presenting all of this other information and ways to jump off into AI mode and start interacting with Gemini. Or people might just start off using a chatbot right out of the gate and get the recommendation from there. So there's different ways that businesses and law firms in particular need to grow and be into those resources and be a recommended firm. So it's changes to the strategy, changes to the tools that people are using. And then we're also seeing just there's different ways that the work is getting done. One of the most obvious ways that people are using AI is for content production. And that is both in law and in marketing. It's a whole can of worms. It has made it really easy to brainstorm, to generate content. The term now for it is AI slap because, maybe it doesn't have like the personality or, isn't entirely factually correct. But man, it sure does it fast and it sure looks good. And in a lot of situations, it does get the job done. So there's, been a real change in the way that services are provided is again both in law and in marketing with how much how easy it is to produce content, and then it spills into it's such a deep question. We could do multiple episodes on this as well, but it spills over into how other work is getting done as well with graphic manipulation, with video editing. So it's really um, it has done a lot to change the process to make things in some ways way easier, way faster, in other ways much more complicated. For instance, on content, sure, you could put a good prompt um, into an AI and have it generate a blog post for you. But things come up with that. One AI all have ways that they do things, and there are tools that very reliably detect AI generated content. So if tools can detect it, so can search engines. They are aware that whether a piece of content is AI generated or not. And there's still a great unknown about how it's going to treat that content in the long run. So that's sort of again, just a thing hanging out there. But so that's a way that maybe it makes content production more easy. But we're looking at ways, how can I make it better? And I think this is where law firms are looking at it as well. How can we use AI to improve our research, streamline that process, get more information to assist with our writing? And then when we're done with the writing, whatever we're working on, how can we go back to the AI and interrogate our work, edit it, critique it, run competitive analysis, and ways to make it better. So in that regard, it's made the process more complicated, but the end result is better than it used to be before AI. Yeah, I mean, it's like that's a good point. I mean, as soon as you peel back one layer, it's like there's five more, and you peel back another one, there's five more. We just developed our own, our AI policy, and it was just like that. Just like every question we answered led to more things. And law firms face this as well. And this gets back around to some of the things going on in the infrastructure and IT side of things as well. But now, whether law firms want it or not, AI tools are getting baked into the software that they already use. And so that's, again, raises all sorts of issues about the ethics and how the work's getting done, things that they might need to fact check or be aware of, because maybe the research tool you've been loving and using for years now all of a sudden is relying on AI. Maybe it's public facing, maybe it's behind the scenes, and it's still has fundamentally changed some of the tools they're using, again, whether they asked for it or not.
All right. Well, perfect. So I want to transition a little bit, more about you and what do you personally enjoy most about your role today, especially after 2 decades of helping law firms grow and modernize?
Yeah, thanks. I got to say, there's a lot that I love about the work that I do. One is just the team that we have here. It's such a good group of people, smart, ambitious, problem solving. And the work that we're doing is just, it's so much fun. Sometimes I'll tell people, like, yeah, we run an agency. We only work with law firms. And their eyes, they're like a deer in head. They're like, why would you choose to work with attorneys? Like, one, I was sort of born into it. Both my folks were attorneys. So I was just always like in that world. But I think what I love and really specifically why we focus on solo and small firms is I love business. And it's so fun to work with somebody who's getting their idea off the ground. Like this is their dream. They want to make it happen. And we work with firms in all different phases. Sometimes they're coming to us, they've been around for a long time. Other times they're just bootstrapping, totally starting from scratch. Other situations, it might be one or a group of attorneys peeling off from a bigger firm and starting their own, thing, and they're sort of hitting the ground running with a book of clients. But in all of these situations, we're working with attorneys who they often had some alternative to work at a bigger firm or work for somebody else. And just something was eating at them in the way that they had to do the work or that environment or whatever. And so even though there was all of this safety and support provided for them, they're like, "Yeah, I got to take that risk and go for it. I got to do things my way because they have a vision for what's better, whether it's for their clients, for their lifestyle, family, whatever." And it's just really fun to work directly with them and like make that happen to, we provide branding, websites, marketing. And so it's a lot of like learning their story, drawing that out, and then telling that story, through the website, through whatever marketing services make sense for them. But then also connecting them with folks like you and other partners that like help fit the pieces of the puzzle together for what it takes to really run a business. Because it's not just the marketing side of things. There's a whole host of things that go to it. So it's fun to have those relationships and just be sort of a guide to them so that they can do their thing and make it happen.
All right, no, I appreciate that. That's some great insight there as well. So, kind of one of my final questions, and this is probably one of my favorite pieces to ask is, kind of I always love to ask our guests, about some upcoming initiatives or what's currently going on in the business. So, what are some of the most important initiatives or changes that you're currently focused on right now at the modern firm, whether that's new services, technology, or how law firms are operating today?
Yeah. Yeah. We've got two initiatives going on right now. I mean, there's always stuff in the hopper, but two things that come to mind right now. One goes back to how the landscape has changed with AI and how much more, we've been fortunate. We are a long running, stable company, good reputation, and have historically had really good visibility in search engines. But then, as with our clients, the landscape has changed, and you need to be visible more broadly in more things, and especially with the way that AI is ingesting information, and informing its own opinions and recommendations about a business. So we're just practicing what we preach to our own clients and doing more and more marketing and outreach and putting more helpful information out there to help our clients and our potential clients. And then the other side of it is just with the way that, again, for our own clients, the way that the landscape has changed for how we need to be doing more to help them, I guess, put all the pieces together. So we have a real partner initiative going right now to be further deepening and growing the relationships with other like-minded businesses that really help the same kinds of clients that we do, and so that we can get them to trusted resources, real human connections, and just help them really help our partners, help our clients be working with good people and doing the thing, making it happen.
All right. Well, I appreciate all that. And I know we're kind of approaching the end of our time. So, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I want to go back to the AI thing, and this is something you and I also talked about in our when we were sort of meeting each other, to plan for this episode, and how law firms and lawyers in particular are often a group that is a bit behind the curve, behind the bleeding edge of technology. And things are now changing at such a fantastically fast pace, and it's putting a lot of pressure on them. And so I want to say, in particular, with AI, if a firm hasn't tried it out yet, I was at CleoCon last fall and having this discussion with a client and a few other people at the table. One of the attorneys that was, had I think a daughter at a bigger firm, said they had a mandate come down from the firm to just try AI 15 minutes a day for whatever. Just start interacting with it, trying it out, experimenting, just sort of dip your toes in and start using it. So if you haven't done that yet, just just start doing it. Just start using it, start trying it out in your own life, maybe in your work life, and just try. And then importantly, keep coming back to it, because maybe you tried it out 6 months or a year ago and it wasn't adequate. It's it's getting better so quickly. So even in our own company, things that we couldn't do with it a year ago, we can now do. And it just all of a sudden it just started working better. It started, not, making it, better than our previous process. And so it's just the pace of the change is so great. We're sort of whatever you're working with right now, it's like the current worst version of it. It's only going in one direction. And so I'd say just keep experimenting, keep trying, because it's not going away. And so you can't have your head in the sand about it. You got to really embrace and start figuring out ways to use it competently, to talk about it, and to start integrating it into the way that you do work, or you're going to get left behind.
All right. Well, Brandon, I appreciate so much for you taking the time to come on. Had a lot of great insights and information to share. I know it's some valuable information. So, for anyone watching, if you'd like to know more or be able to reach out and find out how Brendan and his company can help you, all the information will be in the description below this video. And again, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, you got it, David. Looking forward to our continued friendship and talking again.